in a bipartisan way. But without term limits, this will never happen. Furthermore, I believe, as many others believe, that the Supreme Court justices serving life terms is not in the best interest of the American people. Perhaps they should be limited to 20 years. I remind the American people again that this is their government, their constitution. They have every right to insist on these major changes. I suggest the fact that one president could appoint the majority of the Supreme Court, and that would not serve in the best interest of the American people if these justices are serving life terms. Turning to economic policy, there are numerous things that can be done to create jobs and stimulate the economy and bring the end to the crashing housing market. Now, my current Republican candidates that I face have made, in my view, an irresponsible statement in reference to the Dodd-Frank Act that was signed by the President and put into law by Congress. Some of them have stated that they would appeal the entire bill. That is not the answer to the problem. I have been a licensed mortgage broker for over 30 years in Florida. I have not studied the entire Dodd-Frank Act, but I have studied the section that refers to mortgages and the licensing process to mortgage brokers, which directly affects the housing market. I believe that it is extremely important to create a national center in Washington to be able to monitor all mortgage brokers and companies to stop predatory lending practices. There are certain parts of the Dodd-Frank Act that are devastating to the housing market, that are affecting our economy. Homeowners that are in foreclosure are prohibited to refinance their home without adequate income and a lot of red tape, which once again shows how the government can go too far in interfering with the American people's lives, and especially concerning their own property. If a homeowner is already in foreclosure, the Dodd-Frank Act stops them from refinancing without having adequate income in the private sector. In the near future, I would go more into specific detail on how to fix the housing market. What I need is your support and the American people behind my issues, which I am extremely passionate about and that I would fight every day if I am elected President of the United States. Let me list for you 10 of the first important issues. Number one, it is important to invade Cuba and overthrow the Cuban regime, to bring freedom to the Cuban people after 48 years of being ruled and controlled by the illegal war criminals Fidel Castro and his brother Raul Castro, and keep our Western Hemisphere free of dictatorships. Number two, term limits for the Senate and the Congress and Supreme Court justices. Number three, the protection of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid for the elderly. Number four, a fair immigration policy that is under the federal government's control, not given to the states. Number five, a health care plan that is fair for all Americans and does not disrupt current doctor-patient relationships. Six, a tough border control that now must be assisted by our U.S. military. Seven, to maintain the strongest military in the world. Eight, to strengthen our economy and to reduce our deficit, and finally have a balanced budget. 9, to strengthen our homeland security. 10, to strengthen our education system to make sure that teachers are paid adequately, because the future of our country starts with a child. Now, there are over 200 presidential candidates that have filed with the Federal Elections Commission. The American public now is only viewing approximately 8 candidates. This system is definitely flawed, and the media has a lot to do with what candidates get publicity for their views on their issues. Some of my issues are important to the American people. To pull out of this economic disaster and once again be respected as a military superpower that would deter any enemy or any country that may provoke us or threaten our liberties or try to hurt our people. They would realize the consequences of a U.S. retaliation that would be swift. Our liberties and freedoms must never be threatened by anybody in the world. And the U.S. must once again show the world that it does have the greatest military in the world and is ready to act when necessary. On April 8th, 2012, which is on an Easter Sunday, I am calling for a multi-million person march for all people that believe in freedom and justice and liberty for all people in the world, which will be led by the Cuban people that have atrocities levied against them for over 48 years. The United States has perpetuated this atrocity by not invading Cuba and overthrowing the Castro regime based on broken agreements of the U.S. government made by our late President Kennedy in 1963. It is never too late in life for anyone or any government to make a wrong turn into a right. The young should know it and the old should know it. When things are going well, that's not when you are really tested. It's when things are going wrong, when you're down. It's when you get up and fight for your rights. That's when you are truly tested. On Easter Sunday, April 8th, people should meet at the U.S. Capitol at 12 p.m. to follow the Cuban leadership, the Cuban exiles, and myself as a presidential candidate. This march will begin at the U.S. Capitol and will go past the White House and back to the U.S. Capitol. At that time, it is not I, as a U.S. presidential candidate, that you will hear from. It will be the Cuban exiles that will tell you their stories of not seeing their families for over 30 years. They will tell you their stories of their families being tortured and imprisoned and murdered by Fidel Castro and Raul Castro, and the mental anguish that they have to live through every day of their lives, caused by one man, Fidel Castro, who is nothing more than a war criminal that should have been executed many years ago for crimes against humanity and against the Cuban people. This march will show that the Cuban people will no longer tolerate the U.S. government's policy towards Cuba. The U.S. government has left the Cuban people with no way to overthrow the Cuban government on its own. It is God's will that I believe the Cuban people should be freed, and it will show the world that Latin America and that the American people will not allow our government to continue this atrocity against the Cuban people. Should I be the only person on Easter Sunday marching from the Capitol past the White House, I will do it with dignity and with all of the convictions that I believe that the policies towards Cuba by the United States government are wrong. If I do not win the Republican nomination to challenge President Obama, I pray that the next President of the United States will carefully examine my statements and the policy towards Cuba and bring freedom to the Cuban people. I call Cuba the forgotten people. God bless America, and God bless the American people.